She said it with a smile, and she pointed with a wine glass. And I want you to hear the exact sentence the way I heard it, standing in the kitchen of the farmhouse I paid off in 1994. There's a cot in the tack room, Dale. You'll be more comfortable out there anyway. You're an early riser. Chelsea, 28 years old, my son's fiancée as of 11 days, hostess of a welcome dinner in a house she had lived in for 7 months. Her parents were taking my bedroom because her parents, quote, couldn't do stairs, and the guest room was now her office, and the office was now her, quote, content studio. And so the math of the house had worked its way down to me, 63 years old, being assigned to the barn. My son Brandon stood next to the refrigerator while she said it. 29 years old. I watched him over her shoulder, and I want to be fair to him the way I'd want somebody to be fair to me. So I'll say it exactly. He didn't laugh, and he didn't look away, and he didn't say a word. He studied the label of his beer like it had instructions on it. And what happened inside me in those 4 seconds wasn't anger at her. You can't be angry at a stranger for reading a map wrong when your own boy drew the map. I said, all right. That's all I said. 2 words. I picked up my duffel bag from beside the mudroom door where I'd set it an hour earlier, back when I still thought I was staying in my own room. And I walked across the gravel in the last of the light. And I slept in the tack room of my own barn, on the cot I keep out there for foaling season, under a horse blanket I bought at an auction in Shelbyville the year Brandon was born. Now, if that had been the whole weekend, this would be a short and bitter little story, and I wouldn't be telling it to you. What made it a different kind of story was a piece of paper folded twice in the inside pocket of my jacket, hanging on a nail by the tack room door, 4 feet from my head all night long. I'd like to say I'm the kind of man who carries important papers around out of wisdom. Truth is plainer. I'd had a fence-line survey done that month for the county. The folder was in the truck, and the copy of the deed was in the folder. Cedar Hollow Farm, 181 acres, Harrison County, Kentucky. Recorded owner, Dale T. Marshall. Just me. It's been just me on that paper for 31 years. Everybody at that welcome dinner, the fiancé pointing with the wine glass, her father with his golf tan and his talk about opportunity, her mother photographing my dead wife's china cabinet like a real estate listing. Every one of them was operating on one shared fact that wasn't a fact. They believed my son owned the farm, and my son had let them believe it for 7 months. Here's the part I'll ask you to sit with, because it's the part I had to sit with, on a canvas cot, listening to a mare named Biscuit shift her feet 10 yards away. Chelsea's sentence didn't come from nowhere. Cruelty like that never does. It comes downstream of a story somebody told, the way water comes downstream of rain. In her story, the tired man in the plain shirt with the rough hands was the dependent, the hanger-on. The widowed father, the young landowner generously kept around. In her story, sending me to the barn wasn't an outrage, it was housekeeping. I lay there in the smell of saddle leather and cedar shavings, which, if I'm honest, is a smell I've always liked better than any bedroom, and I made a decision I'd keep for the next 9 days. I decided not to correct anybody, because a man who's kept books for 30 years knows this. You don't learn what people are by handing them the truth. You learn what people are by watching what they build on the lie. Let the story run, and keep the receipts. The story was going somewhere. Stories like that always are. Somewhere in that house, over my dead wife's china, plans were being made that only worked if the farm belonged to Brandon. I wanted to see the plans, and 9 days later, at a rehearsal dinner with 42 chairs on my own south lawn, the plans stood up wearing a blazer, tapped a fork against a glass, and announced themselves to everyone I know. They'd printed brochures. I'll get to the brochures. But first, you need to know how a man ends up owning a farm his son gets credit for. Because if you don't understand the 7 months of quiet that came before that cot, you won't understand what I did about it. And you might mistake what I did for revenge. It wasn't revenge, it was bookkeeping. My name is Dale Marshall. For 34 years, I ran Marshall Fence and Land out of Harrison County, Kentucky. Agricultural fencing, pole barns, land drainage. If you've driven past a horse farm in the central part of the state and admired 4-board fence running straight as a ruled line over a hill, there's a decent chance my crews set it. I started with a borrowed post driver and a truck with a soft clutch, and I ended with 9 employees and my name on water towers worth of invoices. And the reason it worked for 34 years is the same reason this story ends the way it ends. I write everything down. Every invoice, every receipt, every handshake deal converted to paper within 24 hours. Because my father went broke in 1981 trusting a man's word about a cattle lease, and I watched what not writing things down does to a family's kitchen table. People in town used to joke about it. Dale Marshall would write up a lunch order like a contract. That's fine. Laugh. My ledgers are boring right up until the day they're the most interesting thing in the county. Cedar Hollow came to me in 1993, a bank sale. Rundown, the farmhouse full of raccoons and the pastures full of thistle. Margaret and I spent every weekend for 6 years bringing it back. My wife planted the pin oaks along the drive the same spring she was pregnant with Brandon, and there's a photograph on the mantle, or there was, before it got moved for being, quote, cluttered, of Margaret standing next to a sapling no taller than she was, one hand on the tree and one hand on her belly. Both her projects came up tall. She got to see the tree finish. She didn't get to see the boy. Cancer took her when Brandon was 19. And I'm not going to make you sad about it here, except to say that when a house loses the person who made it a house, the 2 people left behind either grow together or grow strange. And Brandon and I, God forgive both of us, grew strange. He's not a bad man, my son. I need you to hold on to that through everything I'm about to tell you, because Chelsea's easy to judge, and her father's easier. But Brandon is the actual riddle of this story. He's soft-handed and warm and quick to laugh, made of his mother's parts mostly. And he has one flaw, the kind that doesn't look like a flaw at cocktail parties. He needs to be admired. Needs it like a crop needs rain. And a young man who needs to be admired, standing next to a father who owns things, will start borrowing the shine off those things without ever telling a single technical lie. Watch how it's done. It's a magic trick. And like all magic tricks, it's disappointing once you slow it down. 3 years ago, Brandon's resume, an equine science degree, and 2 jobs he'd left politely, wasn't adding up to the life he wanted. And I offered him a project instead of another loan. Cedar Hollow had good bones for a boarding operation. 22 stalls, indoor arena I'd built in the 2000s, paddocks already fenced by the best fence company in the state, if I say so myself. I proposed. He moves out there, runs a boarding stable as his own business, builds something. I keep the land and buildings. He keeps every dollar the business makes. And because I am who I am, I wrote it up. A license and occupancy agreement. My lawyer drafted it. Teresa Vance, you'll meet her later. 4 pages, signed by both of us at this very kitchen table. Rent, $1 a year. Ceremonial, so the paper had consideration. Business his. Ground mine. Clause 11. And remember, Clause 11. The agreement is personal to Brandon, non-transferable, creates no tenancy and no equity interest, and terminates on 30 days' notice or immediately upon, and I quote my own document, any attempt to encumber, pledge, or represent the property as security or asset of the licensee. Any attempt to represent the property as his. Clause 11. My lawyer raised an eyebrow at that one 3 years ago and asked what I was worried about. I said I wasn't worried about anything. I'd just met my son. So Brandon moved out to the farm, and here's the truth. He did well. Genuinely. The boy can charm a nervous horse and a nervous horse owner with the same voice, and inside of 2 years, he had 19 of the 22 stalls boarded, a waiting list, a girl who came in to teach lessons, and a business Instagram with more followers than the county has people. Cedar Hollow Stables. Brandon Marshall, owner. You see it? There it is, the trick. He was the owner of the stables, the business, the LLC. I helped him stand up. Cedar Hollow Stables, LLC. His entirely. Cedar Hollow Farm, the dirt, the barns, the house, the oaks. Mine entirely. One word doing 2 jobs, and Brandon never once, in 3 years, used the word wrong exactly. He just never used it right in front of anyone it would cost him admiration to correct. The photos didn't help. Him on the porch with coffee. Him on the tractor. My tractor. At sunset. Caption: another day at the office. Nothing in it a lawyer could hang him with. Everything in it a stranger would read one way. The town read it that way. Old customers would stop me at the co-op and say, "Here the boy's got the farm now. That's fine, Dale. That's how it should be." And I'd say, "He's running a stable out there and doing a good job of it." True words. Half a correction. I told myself the difference didn't matter over a feed bill. That's my share of the blame, and I'll carry it where you can see it. The lie was cheap because I subsidized it. Every time I let his rented shine go unbilled, the story grew. And by the time Chelsea walked into it, the story had a porch and pin oaks and 181 acres, and not one soul left in her hearing who'd ever say otherwise. She met him in Lexington at a horse show in the fall. By Christmas, she'd, as they say, moved her lessons to Cedar Hollow. By March, she lived there. I met her 4 times in those first months, and 4 times she was pleasant to me in the exact way you're pleasant to staff at a decent hotel. And I couldn't figure out the flavor of it until the 4th visit, when I was up a ladder clearing the gutters, my gutters, and she walked past below with her phone to her ear and said to somebody, "Oh, that's Brandon's dad. He helps out around the place. He's sweet. He helps out around the place." I sat up on that ladder for a minute and looked down the drive at Margaret's Oaks, and I laughed. Alone, at 63, with a handful of wet leaves. Because what exactly do you say to it? Every fact was accurate. I do help. I am sweet. It's the frame that was stolen, not the facts. And you can't sue a frame. So I did what I do. I went home, opened the ledger, the personal one, the gray cloth one Margaret bought me at a stationery store in Louisville in 1989, and I started a fresh page with the date, and I wrote at the top, Cedar Hollow. New account. Let's see where they take it. 9 days before the cut, that page had 4 entries. By the rehearsal dinner, it had 31. The engagement happened in June, on the farm, at sunset, with a photographer hidden in my equipment shed, which I know because I got an invoice question from the photographer's studio by mistake, addressed to, and I want this on the record, Mr. Brandon Marshall, Cedar Hollow Farm, owner, entry number 5 in the gray ledger. I called my son that week to say congratulations, and I meant it, and we had a good talk, the best in a while, and at the end of it he said, "Dad, listen, Chelsea's folks are coming end of the month. They're excited to see the place. Her dad's a business guy, real sharp, I want." And then a pause I have thought about many times since. I want it to go well. I want it to go well. Not, I want them to meet you. I said, "What does going well look like, son?" And Brandon laughed the laugh he does when a question's too close, and said, "You know, just relaxed. No shop talk. They're not farm people. Her dad golfs. Her dad golfs. All right. Her dad is Gary Wendell. I'm going to introduce him to you the way he introduced himself to me, which was at the welcome dinner. Hand out, teeth on. before Chelsea had even finished saying my name. "So this is the famous Dale. Great little operation you all have got here. You must be proud of what Brandon's built." 3 sentences, and the deed already rewritten in his mouth. What Brandon's built. Gary runs a company outside Cincinnati that develops what he calls event destinations, which as near as I can tell means he buys pretty land, wraps it in white tents and string lights, and charges brides $30,000 to stand on it. He has a laugh he aims like a hose, and a habit I noticed inside of an hour. He doesn't look at things, he appraises them. I watched him walk my south lawn before dinner, phone out, not taking pictures, taking measurements, pacing it off, heel to toe, the way I pace a fence line. Entry 7. GW paced the south lawn, 60 by 120, give or take. That's a tent footprint. Donna, the mother, is quieter and, I came to think, kinder underneath it all, though the kindness had been trained to heal. She photographed the inside of the house all weekend, quote, for inspiration. It was Donna who took my room. I'll be fair, she didn't know it was my room. Somebody had already cleared my things into totes by the time they arrived. I found the totes in the hall closet, labeled in dry erase marker. The marker said storage, and then under it, smaller, D's stuff. D's stuff. Entry 8. And then the dinner, and the wine glass pointing in the cot. You know that part. Here's what you don't know yet. What I heard through the tack room wall at 6:40 the next morning. The tack room shares a wall with the barn office, which is where the good coffee maker is, and Gary Wendell is an early riser too. He was on the phone, door shut, voice down. But a barn office door is a barn office door. I hung it myself, and it seals about as well as a screen porch. He was talking to somebody named Rick, and I stood there in my socks with a coffee cup in my hand and listened to the following. And that same afternoon, I wrote it in the ledger as close to word for word as memory allowed, which after 30 years of writing down handshake deals is close. No, Rick, listen. The bones are perfect. 20-minute drive from the interstate. The barn photographs like a movie set. There's 180 acres, so zoning's a nothing burger. We do the wedding here in October. That's the proof of concept. My daughter's own wedding. Are you kidding? The marketing writes itself. Then spring, we launch it as a venue. 15, 18 events a year at 22 to 30 a pop. You do the math. The kid's already got the horse thing running. That's texture. Brides love a horse. No, that's the beauty of it, Rick. There's no acquisition cost. The kid owns it outright. Family land. No debt on it. I already looked. No mortgage recorded since '98. The dad? No. Widower. Keeps to himself. Some kind of retired fence contractor. He's out of the picture. Non-factor? Right. Once they're married, we fold the land into the venture as their equity stake, and my company carries the build-out. 51, 49, my side of the table. I'll send you the one-pager. We're printing material for the rehearsal thing next week. Soft launch to the family. Get everybody clapping. Makes it real. People don't unclap, Rick. I want to testify to you about what a man feels standing in wool socks in his own barn, hearing himself declared a non-factor in the disposal of his own land. I felt 2 things at the same time, and they did not argue with each other. The first was old and hot and had my father's cattle lease in it somewhere, and it wanted to open that office door off its hinges. The second was the feeling I can only describe as professional. The feeling of an auditor who has been staring at a suspicious column for months and finally finds the bad number. There it was. All of it, in one phone call. The plan, the structure, the timeline, the brochures, and the 2 load-bearing beliefs holding up the whole tent. The kid owns it outright, and the dad is a non-factor. Both beliefs false, 1 piece of paper away from public whenever I chose. I did not open the door. I walked back to the tack room and I sat on the cot, and I drank my coffee while Biscuit watched me over her stall guard, with her ears doing that thing where they ask a question. And I'll tell you the exact question I was chewing, because it's the hinge of this whole story. And I'd genuinely like to know what you'd have done. Tell me in the comments. No performance, just what you'd honestly do. My son was either in that 51-49, or he was collateral for it. Either Brandon knew his future father-in-law planned to fold my farm into a company, which meant my boy had graduated from borrowing shine to spending principal, or Brandon didn't know the size of it yet, which meant there was still a version of this where my son got pulled out of the machine instead of fed through it with the rest. 9 days to the rehearsal dinner, 42 chairs already rented. I decided to spend the 9 days finding out which son I had, and I decided one more thing, right there on the cot, and I stand by it. Whatever the answer turned out to be, nobody was going to be able to say afterward that Dale Marshall blew anything up on a rumor. When it went, and it was going to go, it would go on paper, in public, in daylight, at a table they set themselves. "You don't unclap," Gary said. He's right as far as it goes. But I've watched a lot of weather come over a lot of fence line, and I'll tell you what else people don't do. People don't argue with a recorded deed. The rest of that first weekend, before the lawyering started, I spent doing something I recommend to any man who's just been declared a non-factor. I made myself useful and invisible, which on a farm is the same posture. And I watched my own property get toured like an open house. Saturday mid-morning, Gary wanted, quote, the full walkthrough, and Brandon gave it to him, and I tagged along 50 feet back with a grease gun and a reason to be everywhere, because equipment always needs grease, and nobody ever questions the man holding the gun. What I watched for 2 hours was an appraisal wearing a smile. Gary didn't ask one question about horses. He asked about the well capacity. He asked what the county would want for a commercial entrance permit off the state road. He stood in my indoor arena, the arena I poured in 2004, sand and fiber footing I still drag myself every Tuesday, and he spread his arms and said, "You could seat 300 in here when it rains." And Brandon said, "Yeah, probably," in the voice of a boy agreeing to a test question he hadn't studied for. At the equipment shed, Gary looked at my post driver, 40 years old, paid for itself 200 times over, and said, "All this old iron, you'd clear it out obviously. Maybe keep one wagon for photos. Brides love a wagon." All this old iron. Entry 11. The old iron and I greased on. And here's a small thing that isn't small. At the north gate, Gary put his hand on a corner post. My corner post. Black locust. I set it in 1996, and it'll outlive every person in this story. And he shook it. Testing. The way men do when they want to look like they know fences. It didn't move. Nothing I set moves. And he said, over his shoulder, "Good bones. Somebody did decent work out here once." Once. The man was standing inside 300 acres of my resume, complimenting the previous civilization. I bit down on the grease gun trigger, and a Zerk fitting took the conversation for me. Saturday night was the dinner at the long table, Margaret's table, and I was at it this time, foot of the table, past the salt, and I'll give you the one exchange that mattered. Donna, making conversation, asked how long I'd been, quote, involved with the farm. Fair question, honest one. She was reading the room even then, and I opened my mouth to answer it plainly. 31 years, ma'am, since before these two were born, and Chelsea got there first. She laughed, light as foam, put her hand on her mother's arm and said, "Oh, Dale's always been part of the furniture out here. We couldn't run the place without him." And then, to me, with the wine glass smile, "We should get you a plaque. Part of the furniture. We should get you a plaque." Now, you're hearing that sentence, sitting wherever you're sitting. and you're feeling what I felt. And I want to teach you what 30 years of contracting taught me, because it's the whole reason this story ends at a recorded deed instead of a shouting match. The sentence was an invitation, not to a fight. Fights are cheap, and I'd have lost it at that table. 4 against 1 with the truth sounding like spite. It was an invitation to fold, to chuckle, to shrink, to become the plaque. That's how frames like Chelsea's win. They don't beat you, they seat you. And the only way out is the one nobody at that table would think to guard against, which is to smile back, pass the beans, and go right down the date. So I smiled back. I said, a plaque would be something. I passed the beans, and Sunday morning, I was at the co-op before church, buying mineral blocks I didn't need, because the co-op on a Sunday is the county's front porch. And I needed to know how far the story had traveled while I wasn't watching. It had traveled all the way. Earl Hodges was at the counter. Earl's run cattle next to Cedar Hollow for 40 years. Our fathers hayed together, and Earl doesn't gossip, which is exactly why what he said mattered. He rang me up and said, easy. Not looking up. Hear your boys putting the farm into weddings. Now. My grandniece says there's a website, prices on it and everything. You leasing him the ground, Dale? Or how's that work now? You leasing him the ground? Or how's that work now? 40 years of good fences between our families had earned me one honest question at a Sunday counter. And I'll tell you, it landed like cold water, because Earl asking meant everybody was asking, and everybody asking meant the story had already outgrown the family and started spending my name in town. A lie about ownership isn't like other lies, friends. Every day it stands, it collects. Witnesses, believers, dollars, deposit checks, brides' calendars. It compounds, like interest. And one morning, it's too big to correct without wreckage. And that morning is always sooner than you think. I put my change in my pocket and I said, Earl, come by in a couple weeks, and I'll tell you the whole thing over coffee. And Earl looked at me for a second, and whatever he saw, he just nodded and said, I'll bring the coffee. Sunday afternoon I drove home, took the gray ledger out of the desk, read all 11 entries back in order, and then I did the arithmetic out loud in the empty kitchen, the way my father never did. 7 months of silence, times 1 town, times 3 brides, times $15,000, times a man from Cincinnati measuring my lawn heel to toe. Monday morning, I was in Teresa Vance's office in Cynthiana with the gray ledger and the folder from the truck. Teresa has been my lawyer for 26 years. She has a farm herself, runs cattle on it, and she keeps a framed cross-stitch on her office wall that says, "Get it in writing," which her paralegal made her as a joke and which she hung with a nail gun, not as one. I laid it all out. The 7 months, the cot, the phone call, the 5149, the rehearsal dinner with the printed material coming. Teresa listened all the way through with her glasses pushed up on her head, and then she put them down on her nose and said the thing I pay her for, which is the truth with the corner still on it. She said, "Dale, you don't have a legal problem. You have a legal advantage and a family problem. And if you handle the family problem wrong, the legal advantage won't comfort you much on Thanksgiving." Then we did the lawyer work, and I'll give it to you quick, because it's the skeleton of everything that happened on that lawn. 4 points. 1, the deed. Clean, recorded. Mine alone. Margaret and I had held it jointly. It passed to me whole when she died. No mortgage since 1998, which explained Gary's confidence. He'd pulled the county records online, seen no debt, and stopped reading. He'd checked what the land owed. He never checked who the land obeyed. Sloppy. A man who paces your lawn heel to toe, but won't spend $40 on a title search. 2, the license agreement. Clause 11, live and loaded. My son's occupancy could end with a letter. More to the point, any attempt to represent the farm as his asset, to pledge it, encumber it, fold it into anybody's venture as an equity stake, would terminate the license automatically, by its own terms, no notice required. Teresa read the Rick callback out of my ledger and said, "Dry as August." Well, it appears the gentleman from Cincinnati is planning to terminate your son's housing at his own rehearsal dinner. That's efficient. 3. The wedding deposits. This is the one that changed the temperature of the room, because I'd done a little looking of my own that weekend. Cedar Hollow Stables' Instagram, the one with more followers than the county, had quietly changed its bio 10 days earlier. It now said, Cedar Hollow Farm and events, weddings and gatherings, inquiries open for spring. And down in the comments under the engagement photos, a bride-to-be had written, "We toured Saturday. We're in love. Can't wait." We toured Saturday. Tours were happening. On my farm. And where there are tours and a business Instagram, there are deposits. And Teresa stopped me there and said, slowly, if money has been taken against the use of property they don't own and can't deliver, that stops being a family embarrassment, Dale. Depending on amounts and intent, that's where words like fraudulent inducement start attending the meeting. If it exists, we need to know before you do anything theatrical. 4. The letter. Teresa drafted it that afternoon, and we dated it, but did not send it. A single page from her office to Brandon. Formal notice under the license agreement, reciting Clause 11, reciting the observed facts, terminating the license effective 30 days from delivery without prejudice to renegotiation. A door closing that held a door open if you read it right. Teresa printed one copy and put it in a manila envelope, and I put the envelope in the truck, under the deed folder, and it rode around with me for 9 days like a fire extinguisher. You hope you won't. You're glad it's there. And then I did the part Teresa can't draft. I tried my son. I'm not going to pretend I engineered a clever test. I did the plainest thing there is. Wednesday evening, I drove out, found Brandon alone in the barn aisle wrapping a gelding's leg, and I asked him straight, with the barn quiet around us. Son, tell me about the events business. The Instagram says farm and events now. Whose idea? Whose money? Whose name on what? And my boy, my warm, quick-laughing boy, kept his eyes on the standing wrap and gave me the answer he'd been given. Dad, honestly, it's Gary being Gary. He moves fast. It's mostly talk. Maybe a few weddings next year. It'd all run through the Stables LLC. And here he finally looked up, and I watched him choose. It's nothing that touches you. Nothing that touches you. There are moments a ledger man waits for without knowing he's waiting, and that was mine. Because that sentence could not be innocent. If it was all Gary's talk, Brandon wouldn't know what did or didn't touch me. To promise me the machine wouldn't touch me, he had to have seen the machine. He knew the plan needed the land. He knew the land wasn't his to feed into it, and he decided the way through was to keep the two truths in separate stalls and hope neither kicked the boards down before the wedding. He wasn't the author of it. I could see that too, and it mattered. He was a young man being moved by a stronger current than his own. Gary's certainty, Chelsea's expectations, the town's admiration, all of it downstream of the one lie he'd never corrected. But he'd had his moment, right there in the barn aisle with his father asking him a straight question in a quiet barn, and he'd wrapped it in gauze and turned it face down. I said, all right, and I drove home, and that night, I moved the manila envelope from under the deed folder to on top of it. Thursday, I called the number from the Instagram, from the co-op parking lot, and inquired about a spring wedding for my niece. A bright voice, one of Chelsea's friends running the account, told me dates were going fast, that the venue fee started at $22, that a signed agreement and a $5,000 deposit held a date, and that, I asked twice to be sure, 3 spring dates were already reserved. $15,000. Minimum already taken. Entry 28. I sat in the truck and looked at the entry for a while. Then I called Teresa and I said the sentence I'd been circling for 9 days. Don't mail the letter. I'll deliver it myself, Saturday. They've set 42 chairs on my lawn, and I believe I'll use one. Teresa was quiet a moment, and then she gave me the counsel part of counselor, which is the part you can't bill right. She said, "Dale, I'll allow it, but hear me first. I've watched men in your seat for 30 years. There is a version of Saturday where you win the lawn and lose the boy. You stand up. You're right. Everyone knows you're right. And being right in public is a whine. It goes down easy, and you say one sentence too many. And the sentence too many is always about the son, not the schemer. Humiliating Gary Wendell costs you nothing. 1 ounce of it splashing on Brandon costs you Christmas for 10 years. So before Saturday, you decide in advance, on paper if you have to, because that's apparently how you people pray. What is the last sentence you say? Where does it stop? So I did that. Thursday night, alone at the kitchen table, I wrote the stopping point on an index card and put it in my shirt pocket, where it stayed through everything that came after. It said, "The farm defends itself. You're only there to defend the boy's way back. Read it as many times as you need to." I did. And Friday, before the arena and the tours and Donna's knock, I spent from 5:30 to 7 doing something I hadn't done in years, which was walk my own fence line, the whole eastern run, alone, in the dark, going gray. I'm telling you about this walk because everything I did Saturday, the calm everybody remarked on afterward, the no shouting, came off that walk, and I want you to have the recipe. You walk your ground before a fight, friends. Whatever your ground is, a farm, a shop, a name, a record of showing up, you walk it. And you let it testify to you before anybody testifies against you. I put my hand on the corner post. Gary shook, still didn't move. I stood where the old line gate used to hang that Margaret painted red one summer, for no reason, except she was Margaret. And the paint's 40 years gone. But I know which post. I walked past the culvert Brandon helped me set when he was 11. Proudest day of that boy's whole childhood. He directed traffic, both cars of it, with a flag. And I stood there in the near dark and let myself feel the entire weight of what 7 months of silence had put at hazard. Not acreage, never acreage, but the right of every one of those memories to stay simple. That's what a lie about ownership actually steals in the end, not the asset. The pastness of the past. Every memory on that land now had a lawyer's question mark hanging off it. And by God, Saturday was going to take the question marks down. I finished the walk at the Oaks with the sun coming up through them, and I'll admit the last thing, since we're this far in. I talked to Margaret for a minute. Out loud, nobody around but Biscuit's pasture mates. I told her the boy had gotten himself upside down, that I was going to have to embarrass him some to right him, and that I'd keep it to the one sentence if I could manage it, and that her oaks had string lights in them, and honestly, they looked fine. She'd have approved of the lights and nothing else. The horses watched me talk to a tree line. Horses are good about it. They've seen everything a farm can produce, including old men consulting the dead about seating arrangements. Then I went in, made eggs, and dragged the arena. And you know the rest of Friday. Between Thursday's phone call and Saturday's chairs, 2 more things happened that you need in the record, because both of them ended up on that lawn in ways nobody could have scheduled. Friday morning, I dragged the arena. Tuesday's my day, but the rehearsal week had scrambled everything. And dragging the arena is 2 hours on a tractor where a man can think, and I was mid-thought, Second pass, good lines. When the barn doors at the far end rolled open, and Chelsea walked in with a couple, mid-20s, the girl already holding her ring hand a particular way brides-to-be hold it, like it's a small lantern. A tour, Friday of her own rehearsal week, and she was running a sales tour. She didn't see me, or she saw a man on a tractor, which for her amounted to the same thing. And that's how I got to hear the script. And credit where due, it was a good script. This is our indoor. We do ceremonies in here when the weather turns. Isn't the light incredible in the afternoons? Our. She walked them down the aisle my wife once walked pregnant, telling them about her vision, about how the farm has been in Brandon's family for generations. That word again, generations. Doing so much load-bearing work for people who wouldn't recognize the generation standing on a tractor 30 yards away. The groom asked something I couldn't hear, and Chelsea laughed and said, No, the horses stay. That's the charm. You'll have horses in your photos. And she said it. And here's the detail I'd want you to have under oath, while pointing at Biscuit. At my mare. Promising my mare to a stranger's wedding album. The couple loved it. Of course they loved it. It's a beautiful farm. That was never the fraud. They stood in the middle of my footing, holding hands, planning a life. Two more people about to write a check into a story with a missing document under it. And something shifted in me that hadn't shifted at the cot, or the plaque, or even the barn office phone call. Those had been insults to me, and a man can budget insults. This was different. These two kids were being spent. The lie had started harvesting bystanders, and bystanders don't sign up for the harvest. And any plan of mine that waited past Saturday was going to have their $5,000 in the wreckage too. If I'd had one doubt left about doing it publicly, at the dinner, in front of every stakeholder the lie had collected, that tour retired the doubt. Private truth wasn't going to reach everyone the lie had touched. The correction had to travel at least as far as the story had. That's not theater, that's coverage. And coverage is a fencing concept, and I know fencing. The second thing was smaller, and it's mine, and I'm keeping it in. Friday afternoon, I drove to the county building in Cynthiana, and I paid $11, and I got a certified copy of my deed. I had plain copies, you understand. The folder in the truck was full of plain copies. Didn't matter. I wanted the seal. I wanted the raised stamp under my thumb at that table, because paper convinces people, but certified paper convinces people instantly. And I'd decided that when the moment came, nobody on that lawn was going to get the 10 seconds of doubt they'd need to start explaining. The clerk, young fella, ran his thumb over the seal the way I was about to and said, "Big purchase?" And I said, "No, son. Old purchase, new audience." Friday night, Donna Wendell knocked on the tack room door. I'd stayed out at the farm through the week, partly to watch, partly because pride is a strange animal, and once you've been assigned the barn, there's a way of occupying a barn that becomes its own answer. I'd made the tack room mine, swept it, oiled the hinges, brought out a reading lamp and my radio. Chelsea found reasons twice that week to walk guests past it, and I heard her say once, through the wall, "He honestly prefers it out here. He's very independent," which was the first fully true sentence I'd heard her say about me. Donna knocked a little after 9, holding 2 cups of coffee like a white flag, and asked if she could sit. She sat on the tack trunk with her city shoes not quite touching the floor, and was quiet a while, and then she said, "My husband thinks you don't like him," I said. "Your husband hasn't wondered about me long enough to reach a conclusion like that." And Donna laughed, one real laugh, surprised out of her, and then she looked at the saddle racks and said the thing she'd walked across the gravel in the dark to say. "Gary was like Brandon once," she said, "exactly like him." Borrowed shine, her words. I didn't feed her the phrase. She grew it herself. sitting on my Tack trunk. Her father had money. Gary had none. And Gary spent the first 10 years of their marriage arranging rooms so her father's things looked like his. She said, "The difference is my father let him. He thought it was harmless. He thought it was even sweet, a young man trying on a life. And then one day it wasn't trying on anymore, and there was a signature where there shouldn't have been one, and it cost my parents a lake house, and cost me something I never got back. And everyone survived, and no one ever said it out loud. Not once, not at any table, for 30 years. She looked at me then, direct, and said, "Whatever you're being so quiet about, Mr. Marshall, and I've watched you be quiet all week. The way you're quiet is not the way a non-factor is quiet. Say it out loud, at whatever table you have to. The families that rot are the ones that keep it in the ledger and never read the ledger to anybody." I have thought a great deal about the fact that the best advice I got in this whole affair came from the enemy's kitchen, so to speak. She never asked me a single question about the farm. I believe she already knew. I believe she'd pulled the same county records her husband had, read one screen further, and packed for this weekend, knowing exactly whose gutters her husband was measuring. Donna Wendell, ladies and gentlemen, married to a hose of a man for 30 years, and still, somewhere under the trained-down kindness, the one person in that house who checked. Saturday, rehearsal dinner, 6 o'clock, golden light, the kind of evening Kentucky issues in September as a bribe to keep you through February. 42 white chairs at long tables on the south lawn, string lights run from the porch to Margaret's Oaks, and I will admit it without being asked. It looked beautiful. Gary's people know their trade. The barn glowed like a set. My barn floodlit like it had never worked a day in its life. There was a printed program at every place setting, and at the head table, on little easels, the brochures. Cedar Hollow Farm and Events, glossy, trifold. Drone photo of the farm on the cover. My house, my oaks, taken sometime that summer without one word to me. Inside, tent renderings on the south lawn, a schedule of, quote, "our first season," and on the back panel, under Gary's company logo, a paragraph beginning, "A family estate for 3 generations. Cedar Hollow is the vision of Brandon and Chelsea Marshall, who are honored to open their land to yours." Their land. 3 generations. The 3rd generation hadn't been born, and the paragraph had already deeded it to them. Entry 31, and the last, because after Saturday, the gray ledger goes quiet on this account. I sat where the seating card put me, which was table 4, not the head table, between Chelsea's aunt and the lesson instructor. And that's fine. A man sees more from table 4 anyway. I had the manila envelope inside my jacket and the deed folder in the truck. And I ate the chicken, which was dry, and I waited for the toasts, because Gary had built his whole soft launch around the toasts, and I'd decided his schedule suited me fine. People don't unclap. We'd see. Chelsea toasted first. To Brandon, sweet enough, rehearsed. Then Gary stood up, tapped the glass with his fork, and gave them 9 minutes. I timed it. Of course, I timed it. 9 minutes that started at his daughter and ended at a business plan. And the pivot came right where I knew it would. And you know, folks, a place like this shouldn't be a secret. He talked about legacy. He talked about opportunity twice. He said, "We're so proud that these kids, with their land and our experience, are going to build something this whole region will celebrate." And he gestured, actually gestured, hose wide, at the brochures on the easels, and 42 people applauded, and 3 of them, I happen to know, had already paid $5,000 apiece towards spring dates on a lawn, whose mowing I still scheduled. And then Gary Wendell, warm and certain and looking straight down the tables in the golden light, said the sentence that handed me the evening. He said, "Brandon, Son, your dad Dale's here somewhere too. There he is. Dale, stand up, and folks, isn't it something? What this family has built on Brandon's farm. Brandon's farm. I stood up, like the man asked. 42 faces, string lights, a fork somewhere still ringing against a glass. I'm told I stood there a moment too long for comfort. Good. Silence is a tool, my crews will tell you. You square the post before you drive it. I said, "Thank you, Gary. I'll stay standing if nobody minds. I've got a toast of my own, and a wedding gift, and it makes sense to do them together." Easy voice, fence-line voice, carries without shouting. I looked at my son, and Brandon was already sitting very still. The stillness of a man hearing gravel shift upslope. And I want the record to show his father gave him one last exit. I said, "Brandon, this one's yours to give if you want it, son. Anything you'd like to say about the farm before I do?" 4 seconds. I counted them, the way I'd counted his silence in the kitchen 11 days before. Symmetry matters in carpentry and in reckonings. He looked at Chelsea, then at Gary, then at the tablecloth. 4 seconds, and nothing. "All right then," I said, and I took the envelope out of my jacket. "Folks, most of you know me as Brandon's dad, the fellow who helps out around the place. True on both counts. Since it's a family evening and family evenings run on stories, I'll tell you a short one. 31 years ago, a fence contractor and a school teacher bought a wrecked farm off a bank, pulled thistle out of it with their 4 hands, and planted those oaks you've strung your lights to. The school teacher's gone now. The fence contractor standing at table 4. You could hear the field crickets. Nobody was chewing. I said, "The young folks run a fine stable here, and I mean that. Best boarding operation in 3 counties, and every dollar of it is theirs, and ought to be. But I've read your nice brochures tonight, and the brochures have the land in them, and the tents, and the spring dates, and a phrase about their land. And so before anybody claps again, or writes another $5,000 deposit check, and yes, I know about all 3 of those, we're going to do 1 minute of paperwork, out loud, the old-fashioned way, because some of you are about to be asked to put real money into this vision, and you deserve to know what the county already knows." And I read it to them. Deed book, page number, parcel ID, recorded owner. Dale T. Marshall, sole and entire. Then clause 11 of a license agreement, dated 3 years back. My son's signature on it, non-transferable, no equity interest, terminating automatically upon any attempt to pledge or represent the property as the licensee's asset. And then I held up the brochure. Their land, the vision of Brandon and Chelsea Marshall, and I let the 2 documents look at each other in front of everybody for a second. And I said, "This glossy piece of paper you're holding is, among other things, a termination notice my son wrote to himself. I've just got the county's copy. I have been to stock auctions, funerals, and 1 tornado, and I have never heard a silence with that particular texture. Gary Wendell's face did something I'll keep for my old age. The salesman's smile stayed up while everything behind it left the building, like a lit sign on a closed store. He said, "Now, Dale, there's obviously been nobody meant." And I said, "Gary, I heard the phone call. Barn office, 6:40 in the morning, 9 days ago. Rick, 5149. No acquisition cost. The kid owns it outright. The dad's a non-factor. You paced my south lawn heel to toe before you'd shaken my hand. You ran the mortgage search and stopped 1 screen early. You're a man who measures everything except who he's talking to." Chelsea stood up then, white as the tablecloths. And here's the strange mercy of that evening. What she said wasn't a defense of the plan. She turned on Brandon and said, in front of her own rehearsal dinner, "You told me it was yours. You let me tell my father it was yours." And there it was, out loud, the whole architecture. She'd built on his lie. Gary had built on hers. 3 brides had built on Gary's. 42 chairs of applause had built on the bride's. A tower of stories with one missing document under the whole stack. She wasn't grieving my farm. She was watching her footing go. Different heartbreak, real one though. And my son stood up at last, 11 days and 4 seconds too late. But he did stand, and said the truest thing he's ever said in company. I never lied. I just never told it. Dad, and then he stopped, and looked down the tables at the brochures with his name on. Land his mother's hands had cleared, and something in his face finally finished arithmetic. It had been putting off for 3 years, he said quietly, but the microphone was still live, so it went everywhere. The deposits. Gary, tell me the deposit account isn't the LLC. Tell me you didn't run other people's wedding money through my stable account against land I don't own. Gary said nothing. Gary's silence had a lawyer in it already. I'll finish the lawn part quick, because the important parts happened after. I gave the toast I'd promised. I said, to Brandon and Chelsea, may they build a life on ground they've told each other the truth about, wherever that ground turns out to be. I drank my water. Then I walked to the head table, laid the manila envelope in front of my son, 30 days, without prejudice, and put my hand on his shoulder. And I said, for his ears only, the letter's the floor, not the door, son. Come see me Monday. Bring your own numbers, not his. And I nodded to Donna Wendell, who nodded back, the only calm face at 42 settings. And I drove home to my own bed, in my own house. And I slept, friends. I want you to know that. Whatever you think of me by now, that night, I slept like a man whose books balanced. Sunday morning, before any of the dust had thought about settling, my phone rang at 7:40, and it was Gary. I want to give you this call complete because it's a specimen, a perfect, laboratory-grade specimen of a certain kind of man meeting a fact and trying to hire it. He didn't apologize. I'll say that for him. He didn't waste either of our time pretending Saturday hadn't happened. He said, Dale. Gary. Look, last night got away from everybody. Emotions. Long day. But I've been up since 5 looking at this thing. And honestly, this might be the best thing that could have happened. Because now we're talking, you and me, the actual principals, straight shooters. So let me say what I should have said. Week 1, partner with me. Same structure, better split, your name wherever you want it. 55, 45, your side of the table this time. The kids run the horse piece. You and I do the venue as co-owners. Your land, my build-out, and Dale. And here his voice did the thing. Dropped low, warm, the closing register. You saw the numbers on those brochures. 18 events a year. You're sitting on a gold mine out there and using it to grow hay. I let him finish. I was at the kitchen table with coffee and the gray ledger closed in front of me. And I let the whole pitch land. And then I gave him the only business answer I had. And I'm going to give it to you too. Because somebody listening to this is going to need it someday when their own Gary calls at 7:40 with a better split. I said, Gary, you're offering me 45% of my own farm and calling it generous because yesterday you were offering me none of it. That's not a partnership, that's a retreat with paperwork. And I want you to hear the actual reason it's a no, because it isn't the math. It's that I watched you for 9 days, and in 9 days, you never once asked me a question. Not one. You measured my lawn, my arena, my well, my son, and my daughter-in-law-to-be. And you priced every one of them. And it never crossed your mind to price the quiet man in the barn, because men like you think quiet is inventory. You found out Saturday what quiet is. I'm not angry at you, Gary. You did me a service, truth be told, You put a schedule on a conversation my son and I were 10 years late having. But you and I aren't doing business. Not at 55-45, not at 90-10. A man who'd fold my wife's oaks into a pitch deck without asking whose hands planted them isn't a partner. He's weather. And I build for weather. Silence on the line. 3 seconds, maybe 4. Then the salesman's voice came back up like a thermostat kicking on. No hard feelings. Doors always open. Tell Brandon and so forth. And we said our goodbyes like 2 men returning carts at the grocery. And that was the last conversation I ever had with Gary Wendell. He was gone by noon. Both Wendells, the rented SUV crunching down my gravel past the Oaks, and Donna in the passenger seat, looked out at me standing on the porch and raised her coffee cup about an inch. I raised mine the same. Some treaties are exactly that size. Now the accounting, because a story like this owes you its receipts, and I keep mine. The wedding did not happen in October. I'd like to tell you it ended in one clean break on the lawn, but engagements die the way fences fail, post by post. Chelsea left the farm within the week, went back to Lexington, and to give the woman her exact due. She returned the ring, and she was the one, not her father, who called each of the 3 brides personally. I know because one of those brides boards a mare with us now, and told me about the call. Every deposit went back, $15,000, though it took Teresa's letterhead and an uncomfortable November to pry the last 5 out of Gary's event company, where the money had been, quote, administratively commingled. Teresa's phrase for what almost happened to those funds is the reason Gary Wendell will golf the rest of his life, 2 states away from any deal with my family's name in it. No charges, returned money, and a scared man make a thin case and a fat lesson. And the lesson was the point. Rick, whoever Rick is, stopped calling. Donna sent me a Christmas card that year. Inside it said, in small, neat schoolteacher handwriting, not unlike Margaret's, "You read the ledger out loud." Good. DW. She sends one every year now. I keep them in the gray ledger, page 32 and onward. Some accounts surprise you with what they pay. And Brandon came Monday. That was the whole question of this story. If you've been keeping score, not the farm. The farm was never in danger. Paper doesn't panic. The question was which son I had, and Monday answered it. He came alone. He came with a printed business statement 3 years long, every boarding dollar accounted. And he sat at this kitchen table where he'd signed the license at 26, and the first thing he said wasn't sorry. It was worse and better than sorry. He said, "I've been the owner of Cedar Hollow at every party I've been to for 3 years, Dad. And I liked him. I liked him so much I couldn't tell people he didn't exist." And then he cried. 29 years old, arms on the table, the way he hadn't since his mother's kitchen was his mother's kitchen. And I made coffee, because some conversations a man can only have facing the stove. And I let him finish every sentence he'd been not telling for 3 years. We talked for 3 hours that Monday, and 2 pieces of it belonged to you. The first, I asked him when it started. Not to corner him, I genuinely wanted the date, ledger habit. And his answer is the part every parent listening should pocket. He said, "Dad, that's the thing. It never started. There was never a day I decided. Somebody at a horse show assumed, and I didn't fix it, because fixing it felt like making a scene over nothing. And then the next time, fixing it would have meant admitting I hadn't fixed it the first time. It compounds. You taught me interest. You never taught me it works on lies, too." And I told him the truth back, which is that I had taught him every day for 3 years by letting the co-op version of it slide, because half a correction over a feed bill felt easier, too. We'd built the thing together, him with silence, me with smaller silence. First honest set of books this family had balanced in years, and it took both signatures. The second, He asked me why I didn't just tell him I knew that first morning after the phone call through the office wall. Fair question, hardest one he had. I said, because if I'd handed you the truth that morning, you'd have managed it, smoothed it, softened it, gotten ahead of it. You're good at rooms, son. You're your mother's charm with my stubborn, and it would have become one more thing you performed. I needed you to hit the wall in public with your own name on it, or you'd have spent your whole life believing walls were negotiable. He sat with that a long time, and then he said, the 4 seconds, at the dinner. When you asked if I wanted to say it first, I almost stood up. And I said, I know, I was counting. Next time, stand up on 2. Then we did paperwork. The termination stood, 30 days, and on day 29 we replaced it. And here's the shape of the new deal, because the shape is the lesson. A real lease now. Market rent for the facilities, $900 a month to start, scaling with the stable's revenue. First and last in escrow like anybody. His LLC, his business, his money. Mine the ground, and every word of whose is what printed where any bride, banker, or future fiancé can read it. And one new clause, drafted by Teresa at my instruction, clause 14 this time, an option. Brandon has the option to purchase Cedar Hollow Farm at agricultural appraisal, exercisable anytime after 5 years of paid rent, price locked, terms family fair. The farm his mother cleared can absolutely be his farm. It just has to be true when he says it. He pays the 9th of every month. He has never once been late. That detail matters more to me than the money. And if you've raised a son who needed admiring, you know exactly why. The first rent check is the last thing pasted in the gray ledger, photocopied, corners squared. And Margaret bought that ledger in 1989 for $2 and change, which makes it, dollar for dollar, the best purchase in the history of this family. As for me and the Tack room, I kept it. That's my last confession. Fixed it up proper over the winter. Real bed, wood stove, my radio. Some February nights when a mare's due to foal, or the house is too quiet in the way houses get. I still sleep out there by choice, under the auction blanket, with Biscuit shifting her feet 10 yards away. And it is a fine place to sleep when it's your name on the rafters and your say-so on the door. The cot was never the insult, you understand. The pointing was. Nobody points anymore. If a story like this one earns a spot in your week, subscribing is how the next quiet ledger finds you. And there's always a next one, because there's always somebody measuring another man's lawn. Last spring, Brandon hosted a wedding at the farm after all. 1. The lesson instructor married her fella under Margaret's oaks, 60 guests, no brochures, and Brandon charged them nothing but the cleanup, and he gave a toast. And in front of everybody, my son raised his glass toward table 4, where I was sitting, because I like table 4. And he said, to Cedar Hollow, which my father owns, and my mother planted. And I get to work every morning. Took him 30 years and 1 bad engagement to land the deed in a single sentence. Loudest applause I ever heard on that lawn. Turns out people clap harder for the truth once somebody finally reads it to them.